What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be building a simple custom summarization app using LangChain, OpenAI, and Streamlit. So let's get started. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come here. I'm already in my folder. I have a repo that I can show you guys here on my right that has some summarization content for some previous videos that I did. It's called Summarization with LangChain, and here I have like a notebook explaining a little bit about how to do summarization and a few other things. And now I added this custom summarization app option, which is what I'm going to show you how to do today. And it's going to be interesting because I added this interactive text chunk visualization that I think is going to be useful for you guys. And overall, it's been an interesting thing to look at how to get, more advanced with custom summarizations. So to build this app, let's get started. So I'm going to just have my guest code open here, and I'm just going to create an app, custom summarization app.py. I already created this app, so I'm just recreating it now for the sake of this explanation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import OpenAI. We're going to import Streamlit as ST. We're going to import OS. And now I'm just gonna copy all the imports for LangChain because it's just a bunch of boilerplate for doing custom summarization. So we have LangChain. I'm going to import the document loader. So for PDFs, we're going to be doing mostly summaries of PDFs. So I'm going to be importing PDF loader. Okay, perfect. And now I'm going to import Tron template. Now I'm going to import the text splitter. In this case, I'm going to be using the recursive character text splitter. Let me see if so far everything's working okay. So if I just come here, I comment this and I just say custom summarization app.py. Okay, so I made a mistake here. Import. There we go. Okay, perfect. So moving on, we're going to be importing the chain, so the summarized chain for this case. So chains are summarized, import load summarize chain. Remember, usually we would just, copy and paste this, but just for the sake of this explanation, let's go line by line, everything that we're going to need. And finally, we're going to be doing OpenAI, which is what we're going to use to load our large language model into our summarization app. Now, it's important to remember that in this case, I still haven't added a free option, but I will do that soon in the future. And then I think I'm going to do another video on solely focus on summarizations with open source models. But right now we're using a proprietary provider, which is OpenAI. And we're going to be doing, summaries with ChatGPT, GPT-4, etc. So now what we got to do is we got to set our API key. In this case, I have my API key in my environment, so I'm just going to call that. I'm just going to say OpenAI API key. Perfect. Now I can do a little test real quick. Everything seems to be working fine. Perfect. So now that I have my API key set up, we're going to set up a few functions. So which functions are we going to be setting up? We're going to be setting up a custom summary function. This is going to be the main function we're going to use to do our summarization. And then after that, we're going to be setting up a setup documents function, which is going to be the function to load the PDF, load the paper, etc., and feed that into our summarization function. Why am I not doing everything together? Because I want to be able to load a PDF and then play around with summaries, and I don't want to have to reload the PDF every time I want to try out a new different summary or different approach. So this is going to be the setup documents, and then we're going to set up something called color chunks, which this is going to be a function to build an interactive chunk visualizer, so to speak, which means something that's going to allow us to debug the size of the chunks we're going to use when we're using MapReduce, which is one of the strategies for summarization, where we're chunking the text into a bunch of small pieces of text, and then setting a size for those chunks and setting a size for the overlap between those chunks. And this is going to be the function that allows us to visualize that interactively when we want to debug that chunk size. Finally, we're going to define our main function, and I think we are ready to go. Exactly. So we're going to start with the custom summary. What we're going to be building the custom summary, it's relatively straightforward. So we're going to have the custom summary is going to accept a few parameters. It's going to accept docs, LLM, and something called a custom prompt, which you may imagine is going to be the custom prompt that the user is going to input to the app so that it can apply that to that paper, to that PDF to summarize. And then we're going to set the chain type, which is going to be 1 out of 3, which can be stuff, MapReduce, and refine. I've covered in a previous video these different chain types and what they are, so you can check that out. Okay, and then the number of summaries, because I want to be able to, do multiple summaries. And now all we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, so the custom prompt is going to be the combination of the custom prompt received by the user plus the text that that we're going to be inputting either completely or in chunks to LangChain in order to summarize. And we're going to set that up with a little smart little call here. We're going to skip a few lines, and then we're going to say text. Actually, I'm just going to skip one line. Yeah. And then this is going to be the content that we're going to be summarizing. But notice that this is not some variable that I'm putting here because text doesn't exist anywhere. This is just something that when I set the prompt template in LangChain, it's going to accept an input variable that we're going to call text, which is something that you're going to see in a second. So now I'm going to say, okay, for MapReduce, I have to set up 2 things. I have to set up a combine prompt that I'm going to put as a kind of constant here. And I'm going to say prompt template. And then for prompt template, I'm going to say template equal custom prompt. And then input variables, like I said before, text as a list, because those could be, we could have had multiple input variables. So this is going to be the prompt that's going to combine a bunch of summarizations from chunks in the case of using the MapReduce option for summarization. And then we're going to set up the map prompt, which is a prompt that usually, we could play around with this, which is how you're going to summarize each of the chunks in the case of the MapReduce. In this case, I'm just going to set it as something simple. So I'm going to say prompt template, and then I'm going to say that the template for this is just summarize whatever it's given to you. Summarize the text just like before, just summarize whatever. Yeah. And then again, input variables equal text. Perfect. Okay. So now that we have that set up, we're going to say, okay, so if the chain type is MapReduce, in that case, we're going to be doing, okay, so chain equals load summarize. We're going to set up the load summarize chain, which is what we use from LangChain to do the summarizations, right? It's what creates the summarization chain. And I'm going to feed in the LLM, which in this case, we're going to give it as options, but it's mostly going to be ChatGPT. And then we're going to give the chain type, which is being given to the app by the user, right? And it can be MapReduce, refine, or stuff. And then we're going to say, okay, so map prompt is equal to the map prompt that we just defined. I decided not to play around with this, not to set like, okay, so the user could set the map prompt and stuff. In the future, I want to make everything like interactive and allow the user to set everything from the user interface. But right now, I just want to have something that it's guaranteed to work, and I don't want to play around too much with too many variables so that it doesn't get overly complicated. And then that's it. So now we have our chain. Now, if it's not MapReduce, I think that the refine option also takes in map prompt and combined prompt, but I don't remember right now. So let's just, for the purpose of this explanation, I'll add something better in the future. But for the purpose of this explanation, if it's MapReduce, we're gonna use the map prompt and the combined prompt as we set here. Okay, and remember that the combined prompt is going to be the custom prompt that we're giving to the user. Finally, in the case that it's not MapReduce, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be just getting the summarization normally without having to say anything, because this already automatically will run the summarization for us. So we don't have to set any custom prompts. It's just a basic summarization. So now I'm going to set up a list called summaries, because remember that we have this parameter, which is the number of summaries, because I want to be able to, get multiple summaries if I want to see, different variations of the same prompt. And then I want to say, okay, so for E in range, number of summaries, summary output. Summary output is equal, summary output is equal to chain. And now we're going to fit in a document, and that's going to be input documents. And then we're going to fit in our docs. And remember, our docs is going to be the result of using the document loader from LangChain that we're going to set up right here. Maybe I should have done this before doing the custom summary. Yeah, that's true. That's a better way to do it. Let's put this thing behind. So right now, guys, I was explaining kind of like first the summary, then the loading, but in the code, it's going to be this one first, and then this one, because it's a better way to explain it now that I think about it. Okay, so now we're setting up the documents. So we have the documents, we have it in our dictionary that we're feeding to the chain that we just set up, and then we're going to say, okay, so return only outputs equal true. So that's going to help us clean up our output. So return only outputs equal true. And we're going to append that summary to our list of summaries, and we're going to return this list of summaries. Okay. So that's what we have for this custom summary function. Now that we have that set up, we're going to set up the setup documents, which is something that, now that I think about it, probably should have done backwards. So I'm going to set up cache data, and then in setup documents, I'm going to say, okay, I want to have the PDF file path, obviously, right? I want to have the path to the PDF file. So PDF file path. I want to have the chunk size, which is the thing that we're setting up here. And the chunk size is going to be the size of the chunk that I'm going to use to split my document into. And after, besides that, I'm going to give the chunk overlap. So chunk overlap. And that's the chunk overlap. What is the chunk overlap? The chunk overlap is the amount of text that can be overlap between the chunks. So if you have a bigger chunk overlap, that means that you're going to have more chunks, because there's more overlap between the chunks. So you're reusing a lot of the text all the time that you're building your chunks. But obviously that also depends on the chunk size. Okay, so you're going to have chunk size, you're going to have chunk overlap. That's the size of your chunks, that like how many, the size of the block in which you're going to split your document into, and then the size of the sub blocks that can overlap between the chunks. So, and if that's not clear to you guys, don't worry about it, because when you see the interactive tool that I did with this chunk thing, you're going to get it right away. So now that we have that set up, we're going to set up our loader. We're going to use the PyPDF loader, and that's going to load our PDF. PyPDF loader, yeah, exactly, and the PDF file path. And then after that, we're going to say, okay, so documents raw is equal to loader download, and then docs raw text is equal to, and now I'm going to get the page content before, doc in docs raw. And now I'm going to set up my text splitter, which is the thing that chunks my text from the PDF. So I'm going to give a recursive character text splitter. And then I'm going to say, okay, so chunk size is that chunk size that I just set up. Chunk overlap. Yeah, it's the size that we just set up. And then chunk overlap. Beautiful. So we have this text splitter set up, right? With the chunk size and the chunk overlap size that we created before. And I'm going to feed the raw text in this list format that I created here to this text splitter. So I'm going to say, okay, docs is going to be text splitter dot create documents from the docs raw text. Okay? And this is what I'm going to be returning with the setup doc. So we have their documents set up. They're chunked. They're ready to go. They're ready to be summarized. This is the process to do that thing specifically. Okay. So now that we have that, now that we have this thing, what I'm going to do is before I go into the more fancy, cool stuff from this app, let's set up our main function so that we can start seeing something happening and we work from there. So for the main function, we're going to set up a few things. First thing I want to set up is the page configuration. So I'm going to say set page config layout is equal to white. And what am I doing here? First thing, this should be there. Yeah. So here I want my app to look white in the page. I don't like the app centralized for some reason. I don't like it centered. I like it wide in the page. And that's just my preference. And now let's say st.title, custom summarization app, because I have no creativity whatsoever. Okay, so now that we have this thing, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chill here. I'm going to say, okay, if name is equal to main. Oh, yeah, beautiful. And I'm going to call this main function because now let's start getting more interactive, okay? I'm going to come here to my terminal and I'm going to say Streamlit run custom summarization app. Streamlit run custom summarization app. Oh, wait, made a mistake. Yeah, beautiful. And now we're running the app. We're going to run our app. Let's see if everything's working fine. Okay, so we're loading. There you go. So we have our app here. Everything's okay. And now I'm going to start doing stuff here and I'm going to set it to always run so that you guys see the app changing as I add more functionalities to it. So the next functionality we're going to add is a few sidebar options. So the first one is going to be for the chain type. So that's going to be sidebar.select box. And then the chain type, actually, there's like a lot of ways to do this thing. Probably there's a better, yeah, we're gonna change it up the order. Don't worry about the error in the right. We're gonna fix that up right away. We're gonna say, okay, so chain type. And now I'm gonna feed it a list with the options of chain type. We have MapReduce, we have stuff, and then we have require. And then when I save this, there you go. Here is our slider. And now after chain type, I'm going to say chain size is sidebar.slider chunk size. And then chunk size is going to be a mean value of, let's say that the chain size mean value of, let's say 20. Just, yeah, 20, why not? And then max value of 5,000. 5,000, we're talking about tokens. Huh. Yeah. Now I'm wondering whether or not chunk size, so I'm assuming chunk size is in terms of characters, right? So yeah, it's going to be 10,000, the max chunk size. Let's say for the sake of this explanation. Okay, yeah. And now I'm going to set the step in the value. So the step is going to be steps of, let's say steps of like 10. Yeah, why not? Steps of 10. And then of the value, initial value is going to be 1,900. And that's just some, let's just say 2,000. 2000. There you go. So that's going to be our initial values. And then that's my chunk size. I don't know why I said chain here. It's chunk size. Beautiful. And now I'm going to say chunk overlap. And it's going to be similar to the thing on the top, but it's going to be called chunk overlap. And for the chunk overlap, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting up the thing that's going to be how much overlap we accept between the chunks. I'm going to set the minimum value to be, let's say, like 5, and then the max value to be, let's say, half of the chunk size, just because. And then we're going to start off with, I don't know, let's say 200. Okay, so there we go. There we have it set up over there. Let me just put this thing. Well, actually, let's just get rid of this because this doesn't have to be appearing here. Beautiful. So we have chunk overlap, and now we can say, okay, so if st.sidebar.checkbox debug chunk size. Yeah. So this is where it starts getting interesting. Checkbox length size. Yeah. So we're gonna add a little checkbox called chunk size, and we're gonna leave it like that for now. We're going to leave it like that for now. We're going to come back to it in a second. And now we're going to say, okay, if this box is not set up, we're going to start building the rest of the app. Why? Because I don't want to have a lot of stuff in this page, but I also don't want to organize it into pages and stuff. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Okay, so now I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to finally define the user prompt. So I'm going to say, okay, input. The user is going to be able to input something like enter the custom summary prompt, and then a place to enter the PDF file path. This is also going to be enter the PDF file path. Beautiful. So we have it here. A space to write some custom summary, like write a summary as a lyrics of a song. Yeah. And a place to enter the PDF file path. Okay. So now that we have these two things set up, I'm going to give a few options to the user. One of them is going to be temperature. That's usually something that's neat to tweak in an app that's doing summarization. So I'm going to put it in the sidebar because I don't want to have this thing kind of crowded with parameters. So in the sidebar, we're going to have something like number input. So sidebar.number input. And then for the sidebar number input, what we're going to do is we are going to say, okay, so set the temperature. Set the ChatGPT temperature. Because yes, in this case, it is assuming it's going to get the ChatGPT thing. And I'm going to say mean value is equal to 0.0, which is the most precise ever. If you guys don't remember, temperature just sets how much randomness your model is going to accept. And a value closer to 1 is a model that's very like creative, let's say, very random. And a value closer to 1, a value closer to 0 is a model that's completely super precise. I mean, as precise as it is possible, because we all know that, LLMs hallucinate and all that stuff. And then we're going to set the max value to 1.0. I don't know if this thing changed. I remember someone talking about temperature. Now it's whatever. Right now it's set to 1. I could be wrong about this max number. And the steps are going to be in terms of 0.1. That makes sense. So we're going to say step equal to 0.1. Yeah, step equals 0.1. And then the default value is going to be 0.5. Okay, so here we have the numbers here all set up for the temperature of our model. And now that we have that set up, we're going to do another box for the number of summaries that we want the user to be able to input. st.sidebar.number input, and then it's going to say number of summaries. And there we go. And in terms of number, honestly, I'm just going to say value equal 1 as the default. But I like the idea of the person can say as many as they want. Maybe we set a max. Okay, so the mean value is going to be 1. Yeah, mean value 1, and then value is equal to 1. And let's say that max value is equal to, let's say 10, because I mean, bigger than 10 summaries at a time doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's it. I'm happy with this approach. And obviously step's going to be 1 so that we don't have 1.1 summaries, which doesn't make any sense. Right? So 1, 2, 3, perfect. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, beautiful. Okay, so now that we have all of that set up, what we're going to do is we're going to set up our LLM sidebar. This is where maybe it would make sense to put it on the top, but I'm not sure. Okay, I want to put this on the top. So I don't want to have this chain type to be the first thing in the sidebar because it doesn't make a lot of sense. It should have some hierarchy that makes sense, and the LLM first makes sense. So we're going to say sidebar, and then for the sidebar, we're going to say select box, and then we're going to say LLM, which is going to be the option for this sidebar. And then the first one is going to be obviously the default, which is ChatGPT. And then we're going to add a GPT-4 option. And in the future, we're going to add some open source in the future. I'm going to put it here, open source in the future. And now, as you guys can see, we have these options set up over here. Okay. So now that we have that, perfect. We have the LLM option. Awesome. We can say something here that it's like, okay, if LLM is equal to ChatGPT, right? So if the user selects ChatGPT, we're going to set up chat OpenAI. That's actually incorrect. We just have to set up chat OpenAI because that defaults to GPT 3.5 Turbo. Pretty sure. Hopefully it does, right? I mean, it does. Yeah, so chat OpenAI, setting the temperature, awesome. And then if LLM is equal to GPT-4, then we're going to say the same thing, but we're going to come here, we're going to say model name is equal to GPT-4. If I'm not mistaken, this is how you call it. Yeah. GPT/4, we set the temperature nevertheless. And then else LLM is equal to, I'm going to say LLM is the same, but I'm going to have it a print say, using ChatGPT while open source models are not implemented. Okay, so this way the person knows that it's using ChatGPT, but in the future, I want to add local options because it makes sense, right? We don't want to spend money every time we want to do a summary, even though it's just like 1 or 2 cents. And then if we press the button summarize, what's going to happen is we're going to get the result from the custom summary. And then we're going to be feeding the documents, the LLM, the user prompt, the chain type, and the number of summaries. Yeah, perfect. So we're going to be saying that. We're going to be saying, okay, so summary. I don't want to say summaries. I want to say summary. Docs. We don't have the docs set up. That's true. Why don't we have the docs set up? Because the docs are going to be loaded with the setup documents right after PDF file path. Yeah. Okay, so let me just finish this one and we go back. So for summary in summaries, for summary in result, st.write summary. So this is going to write our summaries, but we have to define the docs. To define the docs, we need to define when the PDF file path is loaded. So PDF file path is here, and then sidebar, file path. Yeah, because I already have this set up, so I'm just kind of like going through the app again underneath my monitor and just rewriting it so you guys can really see the entire process from scratch. Okay, so equal to If the file path is not empty, we're going to say, okay, docs equals to setup documents. And then we're going to feed in the file path. We're going to feed in chunk size, and we're going to fit in the chunk overlap. And that is it. And then we're going to say st.write PDF loaded successfully. Beautiful. Awesome. Boom, boom, boom. Perfection totalis. Okay, so now that we have our app functioning, let's test it out. We're gonna say, okay, summarize this paper into 3 sentences. With 3 sentences. No, with 3 bullet points. Okay, that's a very custom summary. And then I'm gonna give a smaller version of a paper because just so that we don't take too long with, running stuff, etc. And then I'm gonna say, okay, summarize. I'm gonna click summarize. Let's see what happens. And say local variable docs reference before assignment because docs was here. Okay, so because PDF file path is this different than etc. Let me see if PDF file path is right here, summarize here. So let's think if I just run this again. Let me see. So I had a local variable error because PDF file path was not set. That's because summarize is not nested within the PDF file path. Perfect. Yeah, that's true. So we're gonna nest this underneath PDF file path so that we don't have that issue anymore, okay? Because we only want to be able to access docs if we have a file path pointing to some paper. And we do have the paper 01.pdf. So let's run summarize. And now we're running summarize. And now this will take a few seconds. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so video to summarize that. So we got our summary, output text, etc. There's one thing missing from this output, which I know what it is. When I return the outputs, yeah, I forgot to say output text, so it's returning the entire dictionary. So that's easily fixable. I just have to come here when I do the summary, and I have to say output text, and that will fix the issue right away. And also, it would have been nice. Yeah, no, we're gonna be doing, I'm gonna add the cache data here option just because it's something useful for Streamlit. But okay, so our summarization is working. And now that we know that our summarization is working, let's look at the color chunks. Now, I'm gonna admit, this is something I did with quite a bit of help from ChatGPT, because it was something I had not done before. But it's pretty cool. Essentially what we're gonna be doing is this. I'm gonna just click on the debug chunk size option, okay? So now I'm gonna add the color chunks option and add the processing of the text here so that you guys can see interactively what's going on. And what we're gonna be doing is I wanna be able to debug these numbers, chunk size and chunk overlap. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write a function called color chunks that will color interactively the chunks according to some sliders so that we can see how much of the text we're chunking and how much is overlapping. So to write this function, we're gonna set text as a string. Now notice that now I'm writing a little bit better code where I'm doing a little bit of type hinting because I actually asked ChatGPT for this one. And actually I realized that I have to do a little upgrade on my coding skills just because I haven't been doing type hinting a lot, but I see that, engineers usually do that quite a bit. And I think that the only context in which I do something like that is when I'm writing code for production. Okay, so chunk size, and then I'm setting up, it's going to be an integer, and then chunk overlap, and the overlap size is going to be an integer as well. And this function is going to return a string. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to say something called overlap color, which is going to be the color for the text that we're going to be chunking. And I'm going to set this to light gray, which is 80, 80, 80, according to ChatGPT. And let me just select this. Yeah, perfect. And now I'm going to say, okay, so chunk colors is equal to, and I'm just going to copy this from the other version of the same app so that we don't waste too much time on silly things. So I already have this app set up. So I'm just going to come here. I'm just going to copy this part. This part is not that important. It's just the colors. What I want you guys to understand and what's going on under the hood for this function, which is actually interesting. But remembering which color is which doesn't really matter. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to say, okay, so colored text is going to be an empty string, okay? And then I'm going to say overlap is going to be nothing in the beginning. And then, okay, so I'm going to set overlap, and then I'm going to set the color index. Color index equal to 0. And now that we have this set up, I'm going to set a loop. So I'm going to loop, and then we're going to say length of the text, and then chunk size is equal to the overlap size. And now within this loop, I'm going to say, oh, look at that. GitHub Copilot actually completed this properly. So I'm setting the chunk to have the chunk size. I'm setting the overlap to have, actually overlap here, he did it wrong. So if, so I'm going to say if overlap, actually, I don't like this option either. Exactly, overlap, so color text. If overlap. No, if length of the chunk, yeah. So I'm going to set up a color text, which is going to be something that we're going to be printing on the actual app. And we're going to say, you know what, this one is just way too much information. Let's just add this loop over here. And I'm just going to go through with you guys for what is going on under the hood, which I thought was a really cool version of this function. So what's going on is I'm saying I'm looping over the text, and then I'm getting chunks of the text as a list, and then I'm printing them to the app using HTML, which allows us to visualize interactively through some sliders that we're going to set up the actual chunks. And how we're going to do that? Well, I'm going to come here in the debug chunk size, and I'm just going to copy paste the stuff that I did before so that we can finish this thing quickly. Yeah, it's right here. And I'm just going to feed this thing right here, and there we go. And now I can, for example, let's get some text from my paper, okay? So I'm going to come here, paper 01, which is the, I think, first page of the paper, exactly. I'm going to get this abstract, and I'm going to get this abstract. I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste it here. And now, the PDF file path doesn't have to be there for the debug chunk size to work. Yeah, there we go. And now you guys are going to be able to see, I'm going to put the chunk size to be very small, something like 50, and the chunk overlap to be like, I don't know, 35. And now you guys start to see what's the point with this. You see, you can interactively see the chunks visualized with colors, which I think is a pretty cool feature to have. I'm going to set it a little bit smaller. There you go. So in gray, we have the chunk overlap. And then in the other colors are the actual chunk sizes. And that's a really cool feature to, debug chunks in these custom summarizations. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Cheers.